So here's a slightly different way to plot the graph of y equals tan x, to do a sketch graph. So at the top here I've got the graph of y equals sine x, and then directly below that the graph of y equals cos x. And even though these are both just sketches, I've taken great care to ensure that the angles are perfectly aligned with each other. So in other words, the mark for 270 here is directly below the mark for 270 in the first graph, and the same for 360 and so on. Okay, I've done the same for the third set of axes, and this is where I'm going to plot the tan graph. And in order to do that, I'm going to remember that tan x is equal to sine x divided by cos x. And I'm just going to do the division using the top two graphs. So sine divided by cos. So when x is 0, we've got 0 divided by 1. Well, that's straightforward. That's equal to 0. Let's go to 90 next. Well, I've got 1 divided by 0. Well, that's undefined. You can't do that division. So we have to put an asymptote in. Then I've got 0 divided by -1. Well, 0 divided by anything is just 0. Then I've got -1 divided by 0. Once again, that's undefined. And then I've got 0 divided by 1, so that's 0 again. Now, it's difficult to tell on the sketch, but if you remember, so there's a little bit of artistic or mathematical artistic license here. But if you remember, at 45, you can see the value, even on this rough sketch. If I go to 45 here, the value for sine and cos is actually the same. If you look at the scale, 0 to 1 there and 0 to 1 there, where this line hits the y-axis. And you can check that on your calculator. So when you divide the graphs there, you get a value of 1. Okay, now if we go to this value here, halfway between 180 and 270, it's a similar idea, but both values are negative now. Well, one negative divided by another gives you a positive value. So if they're both of the same magnitude, then you also get an answer of 1. If we look between 90 and 180, we've got a positive divided by a negative. So that gives you an answer of -1, because again, the values are the same size, and a similar thing halfway between 270 and 360. Okay, if we now look slightly to the left, ever so slightly to the left of 90 degrees, we've got a number very, very close to 1 divided by a number very, very close to 0. Both are positive, so it's a sort of a reasonable sized number divided by a tiny number. That's going to give us a big positive answer. If I go just beyond 90, I get a positive number divided by a tiny negative number. So that's going to give me a large magnitude but negative answer. And just from those simple observations, we can then construct, I mean, admittedly, we've got a little bit of foreknowledge, or we know kind of what we're aiming for already. But hopefully this illustrates another way. It's going to move that point because I got that one out a little bit out. It's just another way of constructing the tan x graph, which relates it to an equation which you almost certainly know backwards. So tan x is equal to sine x over cos x.